We'll start at like 3 minutes past. G'day, everybody. My name's Marcus Carr. I'm the unit coordinator for Games and Mixed Realities. Thank you so much for joining me on this live lecture, which is also recorded and will be available each week after the lecture for you to watch. Some weeks I will pre-record the lecture and then just kind of share the video live on Zoom. I do that because sometimes the lecture topics are easier if I can record and edit it and do things to it in Premiere Pro before I upload it. And because if I'm using a lot of videos, splicing those videos in can be easy to do. And then that allows me to kind of chat with people in the chat during the lecture as well. I'd like to also acknowledge the Gadigal and Wongal people, the Eora Nation, on whose lands the university sits and where I work from home for the last 2 years. Pay respect to the elders past, present, and emerging. I love this unit. This is such a good unit. I am so excited to have you with me here today. This is a games and play unit. We are going to have a lot of fun. Studying, when I got my PhD, the university chancellor, they read out the title of your PhD and what's called a citation. It's like 25 words about what you study. I walk up onto stage. I'm finally being crowned a doctor, and the university chancellor just kind of laughs and says, ha, that sounds like fun. You're damn right it's fun. Play is a central aspect of human culture, society, communication, and has occupied the attention of scholars long before video games. Video game play is part of a much wider lineage of human and animal activities. Just because something is fun or playful, it is still, and perhaps more so, really, really important. Having fun is not a waste of time. It is the point of our existence. Everybody plays games. They are immensely popular, more so than ever. Every year when I go and I find the latest version of this infographic that IGEA does, the numbers get bigger and bigger. Most homes have a device on which people are played. Most children are playing digital games. It's not just for children and teenagers. The average age of a gamer is kind of constantly gets older and older. We are playing more, and we are playing in a wider and wider different kind of contexts and on more and more devices. Game studies as a field is a relatively new one, but studying leisure has a long history. Literature studies and film studies are departments at the university. Film studies emerging in the 1930s in response to the kind of cultural emergence of film, and game studies emerged in the late 1990s in response to the kind of commercial success of the digital games industry. But I get it, studying games can feel like a bit of an oxymoron, but games are important and important to study, but also worth studying for a number of different reasons. Games are immersive, like other media, and can tell really amazing stories, but they're also really interesting because they can provide a challenge and a sense of achievement in a way that other media can't. They can afford greater agency and capacity for action. They can enable us to experience experiences that are otherwise inaccessible to us, and they are at once both incredibly social and really personal. So yes, studying games, that sounds fun, but it is also important. Just as there are many different types of games, there are many different types of games. You've got your Marvel, you've got your Thor, you've got your Avengers, but you've also got your indie flicks. You can and so too does games have a variety of different types of games, from AAA, a term that we use to describe big budget games like Grand Theft Auto or Call of Duty, indie games made by small teams of 2 or 3 developers or someone on their own, art games that aren't meant to be played again and again or by lots of different people, but simply use games as a way to interact with lots of different interact with ideas and convey messages. Punk games that are intentionally difficult or weird, alt games that are counter kind of dominant culture, serious games that have a serious purpose. We've got games on our phones, tabletop games, board games, pen and paper games. There's such a wide variety of games, and the purpose of this unit is to kind of try to encounter this breadth of what we have in this medium. So we're concerned with the different ways of experiencing games, how this experience is designed and made, how games might be used for purposes other than just play, and critically understanding the culture around games. So I'm going to kind of dig into these ideas Why are games important? Why games reflect our society? Firstly, games are the cultural medium of the 21st century. They embody the kind of modular, customizable, participatory, and systems-based world that characterizes the 21st century. If film is the medium of the 20th century, then games are the medium of the 21st century. Play is an engine of innovation and creativity. Thus, we can think about gaming literacy and play literacy as a critical way to address many of the problems that we face in society. Games are important because over 2/3 of Australians are playing games. Kids are increasingly playing educational games in primary school and high school, even in universities. And when I did research into the play of Minecraft in Victoria, that over 2/3 of kids aged 9 to 12 were playing Minecraft at the time. Games are also important because there's so much money. One of the things I really hate about Zoom is that GIFs don't work. And this is everybody should know this GIF. We're talking $200 billion a year, half of that in mobile gaming revenue across mobile, smartphone, PC, and console gaming. This is an enormous industry with estimates of this kind of blowing up to even 400 billion in many of the arguments around the metaverse, which we'll get into. In Australia, this is a domestic industry worth over $1 billion. And the Australian games industry is also kind of a really important contributor to the global games industry. Honk in chat if you have played the Untitled Goose Game. Amelia, I asked you to honk in chat. Excellent, thank you. Untitled Goose Game, developed by a small 4-person development team based in Melbourne with a couple of other hangers-on, has blown through, I think, by now more than 2 million sales, which means that this one small independently developed game from Melbourne probably made more money than the entire kind of Australian film industry did in 2020. And what I find most amazing and most important around Untitled Goose Game, this is a game in which you play a just really horrible goose in a quaint English village. And it really demonstrated that by going further than the kind of military games like Rainbow Six Siege and Call of Duty did find an audience for play that wasn't being catered to before you could be a just really horrible goose. And so games are important in Australia as a really important creative industry, but also as one that can reach a lot of people. But I also want to say that games are important because games are art and they reflect our society, and all art reflects the society that produced them. They reveal our values and our taboos, the cultural logics and the configurations of power, grand narratives that we have in society about history, about ourselves, and the prejudices that we have. Video games can purposefully play with and against society, and our play of video games happens within this kind of cultural context. Many of you might have played Animal Crossing during the pandemic. This was a game that became, wildly popular after the kind of onset of the pandemic and all of our work from home and travel restrictions. Animal Crossing finally giving all us the opportunity, the fantasy of having a mortgage and owning our own house. But don't tell me that the popularity of that game and our play of that game during those times is not reflective of what is going on in society at the time. In this course, we have required gamings. You would not do a film course and not watch a movie. You must play games in this course. One of these games is Papers, Please, where you play an immigration agent. this is a really great example of a game which does have a message and can communicate. This is just to give you another idea of this idea of how games reflect society and these cultural logics. This is like my favorite games review ever from someone on reviewing the game Civilization V, which has a union event which gives cities a boost in productivity. And this person was upset in their review because they think that that's not how unions work. Unions promote laziness and have no real positive effect. I disagree. And the University of Sydney Tertiary Education Union voted this week to go on strike. So many university staff will be on strike in week 3. And that's because we are bargaining for better working conditions for staff, which mean better teaching experiences for students. So you'll get a lot of emails about that, I'm sure. We also study games in this course to critically examine them. I want you to bring the critical attitude that you bring to reading an academic reading, or watching an independent film, or reading a piece of literature to the play and your experience of games. Often I find in this course, the people who play games the most do the worst, because they are totally unequipped to reflect critically on their own play and open their mind up to the possibility of play experiences that other people can have. I want you to be able to engage in political and legal and cultural debates around gaming. This is one of the most culturally significant media forms, particularly for younger generations. We can think about debates, kind of critical cultural debates, historically, such as the first kind of popular media panic around games, which was Death Race. In an arcade game in the 1970s, we had to run over little people figures that they claimed were zombies. I've seen a lot of people shouting Call of Duty and GTA in the chat. What is it about the terrorist attack in Call of Duty Modern Warfare that made it such a beacon of criticism, but equally what makes it such an interesting example of play? How do you feel about the torture mission in Grand Theft Auto 5, a satire of the kind of military surveillance infrastructure in the United States? I always remember this one because you're pulling out this guy's tooth in Torture, and you rotate the joystick on the controller to kind of simulate pulling out that tooth. And like I couldn't finish that mission, but you can't progress through the game without doing it. I eventually did. Or critical questions around the representation of women and other historically underrepresented or excluded groups in gaming culture and within games. This is, I can't remember her name, but she's a character in Metal Gear Solid 5 who, and this is according to the game developers, due to her injuries, she got given parasites that compensated for her burned skin, giving her the ability to breathe through her skin, which requires her to wear as little clothing as possible, as covering her skin would suffocate her. How appropriate for the overwhelmingly male set of developers and audience for that game. Which brings us to why we study games, which is to make better games. Because in order to make better games, we have to have a literacy about games. I know there's a lot of students from Master's Digital Communication and Culture here, also from the Masters of Interaction Design, who might see games as a potential career that they're interested in. And I just want to say that if the better we understand what a game is, what a game can be, and what you can do and say with games, that's advances in the medium. The games are so much more than repetitive rounds of military-based violence. I've played a lot of Call of Duty, Halo, PUBG as kind of main favorites for me. But games can be so much more and so interesting. And some examples of just like weird games that I've enjoyed recently: really bad chess. After I watched The Queen's Gambit, as I think everybody did, I got really into a chess app on my phone. And then I found really bad chess. where you start with random pieces. And what I really liked about this helped me understand chess a lot more, because it was chaos. Really helped me kind of gain a familiarity with pieces a lot more than regular chess was. Catnips was a game that I played at Bar SK, a kind of art game bar in Melbourne, where the controllers of the game are little nipples on the cat toy that you spray towards the kittens, which is a weird game. But the controller and our interface to games is often the thing that we think about the least, but is actually the most important. And finally, That Dragon Cancer, a terrifying and frightening game about the experience of having a young child who is diagnosed with a terminal illness. A topic that I'm sure many of you wouldn't think is possible for a game or possibly appropriate, but really demonstrates the potential of what games can be. And just as a side note, I had a baby last year. I'm currently on paternity leave. I work 1 day a week, Wednesdays. Thank you. His name is Tommy. And yeah, this game definitely changes your experience when you have a kid. So my email responsiveness is going to be pretty poor, so you should always contact the head tutor or your tutor or the head tutor, Harriet Flipcroft, in the first instance if you have any questions. Studying games is also going to help you enjoy games more, I promise you. Critically understanding games adds a new layer to your experience of them. It will also, I also hope that this unit opens you up to different kinds of games and play that you don't already engage with. There's many different types of games that offer a huge variety of experiences. And if you don't play very many games, or you play a lot of games, but you only play the same games twice. I saw someone mentioning Dota. Stop playing Dota, play something else. There's so many games that are so amazing and aren't going to ruin you with a toxic culture. Please do. I really hope that this unit expands the amount of games that you play, and introduces you to new ways of playing and enjoying games. You might think this is a silly question, but what are games? Well, look, around 40% of the people in this course each year don't really play games. And I get this question a lot. I don't play games. Can I still do well in this course? Yes, you absolutely can. There's no assumed knowledge, and your ability to do well is more about reading and engaging with the course material. You don't need to consider yourself to be like a gamer. And as I said before, often these gamers struggle the most because they have they're too close to the subject matter to be able to really reflect in interesting ways on what those games' experiences are. Games is very, very broadly conceived. We mostly focus on digital games. This is digital communication and culture. We're interested in what is kind of commercially and culturally relevant right now. But we do kind of touch on non-digital games as well. Shout out to anyone who's playing Dungeons & Dragons right now. I have a PhD student who is studying Dungeons & Dragons and has designed a one-shot Dungeons & Dragons experience based on the literary classic Animal Farm. We'll be putting an email out, see if anyone wants to just come along and play that. To those of you who say, I don't really play games, well, you might be a lot more familiar with games than you think. We're not just talking about games played on a kind of powerful gaming computer, but mobile games are a serious object of attention in this course. And as you saw from the size of the mobile games industry in terms of revenue, is the future of gaming. And we don't look down upon mobile games or casual games in this course. Playing games isn't just for gamers with the economic and social mobility to spend a large amount of money on playing games. Games are cheaper, more temporally flexible, and easier to play than ever before, and that is good. Saw someone mention Pokemon Go. Fantastic. Hope everybody's still playing that. And to those of you who aren't that familiar with games, those kind of 4 main stores to download games for your PC or Mac are Steam, Humble Bundle, Humble Store, Itch, and Epic Games. Each store is a little bit different. On Steam, if you buy a game and it doesn't work, you can get a refund if you played it for less than 2 hours. The Epic Game Store gives out a free game every 1 to 2 weeks. Itch.io is for kind of arty, weird games, smaller, weird games. And the Humble Store does kind of cheap bundles of games as well. Ask your tutor if you're having trouble getting access to any of the required gamings for the semester. Typically in a week where we have required gamings, we'll have some that are paid, mostly under $20, and some that are free. Another weird thing you might want to engage with is meditations. A project by Rami Ismail, a kind of celebrated games designer and speaker, that loads a different small game made by a different kind of indie dev each day. I try to remember to play them, but it's often hard to find the time. But if you really want to expand your horizon of what you think a game can be, meditations is a great way to do it. If you have a laptop or a smartphone, you can play along with this class. You wouldn't study film without watching any films, so don't study games without playing any games. That brings me to the end of part 1 of this lecture. Give me a moment while I load up the next part and jump into chat if you have any questions. And yet Dungeons and Dragons is what they play in Stranger Things. And a lot of its resurgent popularity is due to its portrayal in that show. Let's get down to the nitty-gritty. It's the course overview. So on Canvas, you should see this kind of summary that gives you an idea of the topics for each week, the required readings, whether there's a required gaming for that week, and when the assessments are due. I think it can be, I print mine out, got mine on the wall next to me. The course is organized under modules. Each week will give you access to a description of the lecture, the tutorial, what you need to do before the tutorial to be best equipped to participate in that course, as well as some recommended readings. You have to read the required reading before the tutorial in order to get the most out of the tutorial. The recommended readings are there for if you are maybe you're doing an essay on that week and there's some extra resources for you, or some more things for you to read about if you want to, but they're not required in order to participate in the tutorial. Next week, we're going to be getting into the history of scholarship on games and of play. The required reading is on a study of who plays and why they play, which we will then explore ourselves in the tutorial to understand your background and the background of your fellow students with games and play. If you're new to games, check out chapter 1 in Nick Yee's book, which really gives a really nice history of kind of digital games up to where we are now. The first assignment in this unit is due pretty early. It's the game experience reflection, a 500-word reflection on your history or background in digital games, critically reflecting on your experience playing one game that is particularly meaningful to you. Could be a game of Monopoly you played when you were 11 at Christmas with your family. It could be that like brief summer where we all played Pokemon Go and everybody was outside and that was lovely. It could be the game you played when that helped you process grief from a family member passing away. Or it could be the mobile game that you are kind of compulsively playing every 30 minutes. That's right, there's no textbook for the course. All of the required readings are accessible on Canvas under eReserve. So this assessment doesn't need references. It's not about demonstrating your engagement with the required readings or doing academic research, but to get you to start thinking about how to critically talk about and think about your experience playing games. And this replaces the weekly quiz assignment, which is in the handbook for the course, because students really did not like a weekly quiz because they had to do it every week, and that was really difficult. So that's fine. It can be any game for assessment 1. It doesn't have to be a popular game. It might only be a game that you feel is meaningful because of something we've talked about in the course. It's meaningful to you. I don't need to have heard of it. It'd be good if you explain what it is in the reflection. But this is just want to get you stuck into thinking about it and bringing some assessments early on. So, because I know a lot of other courses, you get a lot of assessment at the end of the semester. So I assume you've all got the free time to do this one. In week 3, we're going to get stuck into simulation and serious games, introducing you to the topics of serious games and gamification. So you can develop a critical understanding about the ways that games can be persuasive, they can educate, they can be ideological, and they are political. The assignment 1 is more of a personal reflection than an academic piece, and you'll talk a lot more about it in the tutorials with your tutors. So this week 3, if there was one week you absolutely had to really attend, listen to the lecture, read the whole reading, really get it, it's this week. Because week 3 forms the basis of assessment 2, the serious games design concept. Because in small groups of 3 students, you're going to develop a pitch or a concept for a serious game. So you're not actually going to develop a game. That would be too much to manage in a single semester. But you're going to come up with an idea for a serious game. So in order to come up with an idea for a serious game, you better understand what a serious game is. And the concept of procedural rhetoric, which is in this week's required reading, is how we're going to understand kind of a serious game in this course. In the required reading for this week, Bogos discusses Animal Crossing, which has a really strong capitalist bank lending procedural rhetoric, who's still in a mortgage to Tom Nook. Week 4, we're going to build on some of those ideas in thinking about how games don't just have this kind of serious ideology built into them, but also perpetuate this kind of hidden and embedded cultural logics and cultural rhetorics and values. And so we'll be thinking through more of the ways that games are persuasive and how we can do things with games, which will again further equip you for the serious games design concept assignment in both thinking about how you can design a game to be serious and how you can talk about games being educational or for a serious purpose. Week 5, we'll be focusing on equipping you to talk about games design. So how is it that games experiences are carefully designed, and learning a little bit about the games design industry so that you can really kind of talk about how your games design and put some really interesting and creative games design elements. Now, I know that not everybody loves games group assignments. And I'm here to tell you that you are wrong. When I was an undergraduate, I didn't pick essays that had exams, and I didn't pick courses that had exams, and I didn't pick courses that had group assignments, and I was wrong. This games design assignment, every year, my students coming and telling me that's the best assignment I've ever done, that's the most fun I've ever had, you were right, I was wrong. This is an assessment that is designed to leverage your creativity, for you to be able to apply your skills, not just in academic analysis and writing, but in graphics design and games design and creativity, and apply that intelligence you have about how it is that a game can be designed to make us have a particular experience. How does design end up making us feel and act in certain ways and learning something about the world in that way? Your groups for this assignment will be assigned in weeks 3 or 4. In week 6, you have a pitch presentation in the tutorial where you'll get up and you'll pitch your game and you'll get feedback from the tutor and from the peers. And then your games design concept is due in week 8. There is many, many more details available on Canvas and in the tutorials, where basically most of the content up to like week 7 is focused on this assignment. The third assessment in this unit is the games analysis. This is a typical critical academic essay where you are going to critically analyze a game or critically compare maybe 2 games using theories and ideas from class. As with all assignments, these are an opportunity for you to demonstrate your critical engagement with the course. So I think it's great that you've played 400 hours of Dark Souls, but don't write an essay about Dark Souls unless it gives you the opportunity to talk about one of the topics from weeks 6 to 10: role play, identity, representation, ethics. Assignments 3 and 4 will be submitted and examined anonymously. You should identify yourself with student number only. The other assignments aren't anonymous. You're doing a pitch presentation in person. You can't make that anonymous. The late penalty is 5% per day. Special consideration is available to support you in circumstances where that impact your academic performance. So please look into that if you feel like something's going on. We also offer simple extensions of 2 working days. Just email your tutor to get one of those. The topics for that essay are from like week 6 to week 10 are game culture and game cultures, which is looking at the toxic culture that surrounds mainstream gaming and the importance of games cultures to the appeal of digital games. Shout out to my World of Warcraft fans out there. In week 7, we'll be looking at role play and identity. Who are you when you play a game? We're looking at some of the critical theories around avatars and identification and the play of role play games like Dungeons and Dragons. Week 8, we'll be taking seriously casual and mobile play. We'll be comparing our Candy Crush levels and dealing with the dominant form of contemporary digital play, mobile gaming. We're looking at location-based games. Pokemon Go is a great example, which are really interesting for the ways that they problematize and transform space and place. This week's required gamings are mobile games that will provide an opportunity for critical discussion about the possibilities for mobile play, which can be really interesting if you go beyond the kind of pokies games that are commercially the most successful. In week 9, we're going to be looking at ethics in video games and critically discussing video game media panics and the idea of video game addiction. And in week 10, we'll be looking at esports and game spectatorships. Esports are growing rapidly with tens of millions of fans watching global finals. And we're engaging with the growing phenomenon of watching play on Twitch, YouTube, other sites like Douyu. We've got some required watchings, some esport matches in the week 11 module. Although I imagine by now, most of you will have watched at least someone playing a game at some stage on the internet. Which brings us to our 4th assignment, which is the mixed reality report, which will engage with the content in weeks 11, 12, and 13 on VR and AR, the technologies that underpin the metaverse, a piece of technology that is so important that Mark Zuckerberg has bet the entire future of his company on it, rebranding Facebook from Facebook to Meta. This assessment is a reflective report to a client on the opportunities and limitations of virtual reality or augmented reality in an industry setting. Again, more information on Canvas and will be in the tutorials. So in week 11, we have a guest lecture by Mark Pesce, looking at the history of this emerging paradigm of computing. In week 12, we'll be tackling some of my research into the ethical implications of emerging mixed reality technologies. VR and AR are not just fun and games. They represent some of the most extractive digital senses that we're unlikely to invite into our home in the next decade. And in week 13, we'll be looking at where VR and AR might have an impact, exploring some examples of where VR and AR is being used. Hopefully will inspire your thinking for the VR report. Now, unfortunately, for remote students, On-campus classes, tutorials are held in the FAS VR lab. So in March 2020, we opened a bespoke $250,000 facility for consuming virtual reality content in education, and then nobody got to use it because COVID happened. And so this semester we're using it. We are going to be the first people to use it, and I'm really excited. It's a beautifully designed space. Every computer is a beefy VR-enabled machine, and you're going to be getting the opportunity in those tutorials to experience VR firsthand, because there's a famous quote by a celebrated VR filmmaker and entrepreneur, Chris Milk, of talking about VR is like dancing about architecture. You really just have to strap one of these things onto your face to understand how good and how different it is. So those of you in the on-campus classes are going to be able to actually experience some VR content firsthand. My apologies to those of you remote. We'll give you some recommended things to try, but if you don't have it, that kind of sucks, and I'm really sorry. Finally, our last piece of assignment is the tutorial participation. This is not a mark for tutorial attendance. If you haven't done the lecture, you've not done the reading, but you turn up, you're still going to be getting a terrible mark for tutorial participation, because you're expected to have listened to the lecture, attempted the required reading, and to participate in in-class discussion and activities. And I say attempted here because some of our readings are kind of dense. They're hard. They're academic reading. It's a high level of language and literature. I don't expect you to always understand 100% of the required reading before you turn up to a tutorial. That's not the point. If you did, what was the point of the tutorial? The idea is that you listen to a lecture, you read this document that you might not 100% understand, and then you go to a tutorial equipped to talk about it, to ask questions, to extend your understanding and help you work through those things you didn't understand, so that by the end of that week, you really kind of have understand and have applied your understanding through that conversation in class. And I know it can be scary and intimidating to talk in loud groups and to talk on Zoom, but this is a games unit and we're going to have fun. So let's make friends and have a good time. Doing well in this unit means reading and engaging with the readings. The assessments are opportunities to demonstrate your understanding of the course materials and the ideas in the course, and those ideas are in the lectures and they are in the readings. Got to play some games. We play some games in class, but please play stuff outside of class. That's right, I'm giving you permission to play as much video games as you want this semester. But when you do, I want you to pay attention to your first-hand experience of playing games. What's going on when you learn how to play a game? Talk to other people about how and why they play. I've talked to something around, I've done about 500 interviews in my research career of people playing games, kids or adults. And everybody has different ways of playing and really interesting kind of reasons and experiences when they play that have made me a more complete player, because I can appreciate those things. All of the play we do has depth, all play has meaning, and I really want to help you unlock that. To get to my favorite part of the lecture, which is talking about me, I am primarily a game studies researcher. So I did my PhD on an obscure Icelandic video game called EVE Online. There are 150 people in this lecture. Shout out if you have played EVE Online. Come on. I just gave another lecture and nobody had. No. It's weird. It's hard. It's intentionally hard. And people can steal from each other. They can betray people. Espionage is part of the warfare. It's just really just filled with the most wonderful, horrible people you'll ever meet. And so I also studied other games with what I call treacherous play. That's betrayal, where you betray someone when you're playing a game. Looking at DayZ, a zombie survival game, and the TV show Survivor. And I recently wrote a book called Treacherous Play, which is out now in open access with MIT Press. That talks about why we find it appealing to play a game where we betray other people or might be betrayed. Which brings me to the other book that I've recently completed on death and dying in video games, looking at games like That Dragon Cancer and DayZ, which have high consequence death, or the way that real death kind of gets involved in play sometimes. I've studied games like Candy Crush Saga, where I looked at people who cheat, as well as children's play like Minecraft and Fortnite, trying to take seriously these games that are often the focus of media panic in society. And in a sentence that some of you will have now heard twice today, I also designed the video games for the orangutans at Melbourne Zoo. I really don't like Zoom because of the GIFs, because the GIFs don't work, but there's a great video in on YouTube on the slides that you can have a look at to learn a bit more about this project that I was involved in, which brought me to my more recent research project with the zoos, which was using stereoscopic VR cameras inside zoo enclosures at Melbourne Zoo, and then giving guests the opportunity to feel like they are inside the animal enclosure and have close encounters with animals at the zoo when they visit the zoo. This one with the red panda was amazing because so the stereoscopic VR camera uses two lenses, and that mimics the experience of our eyes and our binocular vision that we have. And the red panda, we think, thought that this was eyes and was really nervous, but eventually leans over and starts sniffing the camera. And when you watch that in virtual reality, it feels like the red panda is leaning over, because you have depth perception, and sniffing you. And suddenly, when the red panda is about this far from your face, you stop thinking about how cute the red panda is and how sharp its claws are, giving you this totally different way of encountering an animal that normally is just 20 feet above you in the trees. So hopefully those of you on campus will have the opportunity to experience that in firsthand. That research kind of got me stuck into my more recent work, which has been looking at the ethical implications of emerging mixed reality technologies, thinking through the ways that the data collection of these technologies is harmful and potentially discriminatory, a research topic that has become even more popular with the discourses around the metaverse. I have another course that I'm teaching this semester. If you enjoyed my lecture, please join my other course. There's still room, called Emerging Technology and Issues, where we're looking at technologies ranging from AI, big data, algorithms, robotics, smart cities, smart homes, and really kind of trying to equip you with being able to kind of critically interrogate all of these different emerging technologies. Thanks very much for joining me for the lecture today. As a reminder, no tutorials this week. Tutorials start in week 2. The lectures are all recorded, and the recordings will be uploaded to Canvas shortly after they're completed. I'd like to welcome, I'm going to end my recording, and I'd like to get Harriet Flitcroft to wave at everybody. Hi, Harriet. You want to say hello? I'm asking you to unmute.
Hello, I'm just in the Abercrombie Business School right now, so just saying hi. So
Harriet is the head tutor for this unit. I think did I mention I had a baby? Was that was in this lecture? Yeah. I do back-to-back lectures, so I keep thinking, have I already said this? I'm only working 1 day a week, so if you have any questions or inquiries, email your tutor or email your head tutor, Harriet Flitcroft, and she'll be able to help you out with any questions that you have. I think that brings us to the end. And yeah, thanks very much, everybody. See you all next week. I'll hang around for a few moments if anyone's got any questions. I don't know where my dog's gone, sorry. So will we have the opportunity to use the VR lab equipment in on-campus classes? Yes, all of the on-campus classes are held in the VR lab, and in weeks 11 and 12, you'll be using the VR equipment in class. There's a question here suggesting that the timetable seems to malfunction for this course, saying that there's 2 lectures. Junlin, are you sure that you're not enrolled in both ARIN6906, which is at 1 p.m, and ARIN6904, which is at 2 p.m? Unfortunately, I'm not teaching any tutorials this year because I'm on paternity leave. I don't have the capacity, but I have assembled the most extraordinary team of wonderful tutors for you who are all just really exceptional tutors. Sorry, Junlin, I don't know why you've got that issue. If you want to email Harriet with a screenshot of the issue, we'll try and get to the bottom of what's going on. Tingy, is the final assessment for the 2 units due on the same day? Let's have a look. Shouldn't be. Maybe, yep. Yeah, they are. Probably the first day of the exam period is the due date for that assignment. Sorry about that. No, I don't share my Steam ID, sorry. I don't want to see the 1,000 hours that I have in Rome Total War 2, or the fact that I'm playing games while I'm meant to be on paternity leave. Yeah, great. All right, well, I'll wrap up now. Thank you again for joining. Hope to see you next week, but remember, these are all recorded and you can just watch them in your own time if you are unable to attend the live lecture.